And it was really just for me to listen, obviously, to listen and understand what needed to happen for hands and feet. And then also,
I have questions.
Yeah, I have questions. And, that rig was real. It really did what it did. And watching it kind of get craned around was so funny. It was pretty slow in person.
Welcome to the Costume House with Spencer Williams, a podcast dedicated to the art and storytelling of costume design in film and television. I'm your host, Spencer Williams. Thank you so much for being here. For today's episode, we're taking a drive down a post-apocalyptic highway filled with some of the most unforgettable characters you'll ever meet. We are, of course, talking about the dark, hilarious, and wildly chaotic world of Twisted Metal, which is now streaming on Peacock, both seasons 1 and 2. I could be more excited to share this conversation because, as many of you know, I've been a gamer for as long as I can remember, and Twisted Metal was absolutely a part of my childhood, which probably explains a lot of my, quirks. So I was thrilled to catch up with my friend, costume designer Elisabeth Vastola, to talk about season 2. Liz was recently nominated for a CAFTCAD Award in an International Costume Design for Television Made in Canada category, which is so well deserved. This season, she not only continues the stories of fan favorite characters like Sweet Tooth and Quiet, but also expands the visual world of the series by designing the costumes for the Twisted Metal tournament itself, bringing up characters that I've been dying to see on the big screen since I was a kid. We have a lot to get into, so without further ado, let's step inside the costume house. I am so excited to welcome my friend to the podcast for the first time, costume designer Elisabeth Vastola. Hey, Liz, it's so good to see you.
It's so great to be here. Hey, Spencer, how are you?
I'm doing good. It is not fair that I only get to see you every time Twisted Metal comes out, so we're going to have to make this more regular.
I'd love that.
Well, it's so good to see you. It's been a long while since we've talked about season 1, which, as you probably remember, I was a huge fan nerd about. I'm a big gamer, played Twisted Metal. So you've told me a little bit about your history with the game or not so history. So tell me, were you a gamer growing up? Tell me about your familiarity with Twisted Metal before we get into season 2.
I was a gamer growing up, actually. It's kind of hush to say this given, where Twisted Metal resides, but I definitely grew up playing Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and Nintendo 64. In the 90s, I remember my sister and I, rushing to our basement and firing up the games and Mario Kart and, all of that, Donkey Kong. So growing up, I wasn't as familiar with Twisted Metal as a IP, but since, of course, now we're kind of in the dawning of PlayStation, and PlayStation 5 is one of the bigger, I think, consoles on the market, and we have one, and it's I love video games. I love and it's been very interesting to return to video games from a different perspective, from a thinking about kind of translating the medium to screen. And I think it really helped to have an idea of what it's like to sit down and play a game and be immersed in it, and what the visuals are and what the possibilities are. And then, because our fan base of the game, of the series, is such a huge part of the fan base of the show. So I think having that knowledge really gave me a leg up.
Yeah. And one thing I really appreciated the last time we talked was this idea too, when you're playing video games, some of the most exciting parts is kind of actually going through your characters and understanding their personality and looking at their costumes, which to me kind of feels like the costume designer's dream to, it's a post-apocalyptic show, but that's not really the main point when it comes to the costumes now, because we're identifying these personalities through the costumes for these, 1,000,002 different characters that you have.
Yeah, it's interesting to balance the tone of the show and of the games with the setting. I mean, clearly it's a, post-apocalyptic. It's not a happy place
Right.
necessarily, but it is a funny show, and there are a lot of tongue-in-cheek moments and references, and especially season two really settles handedly into the comedy of it all. And so I think costume is a great kind of meeting point
Yeah.
between the tone of the writing and then also, bridging that with the setting and the production design and the vibe of the surroundings of the characters.
Right. So coming back for season 2 is an exciting accomplishment for you and the characters that have survived this world. So before we
Yeah.
get into some of these characters, can you talk about your partnership with the showrunners, including Michael Jonathan Smith, who's someone I've been following ever since I met you, just waiting for like little tidbits on how the show's gonna look. Yeah, I'd love to know a little bit about your collaboration with the showrunners.
It's interesting. I remember MJ, who we like colloquially call him, but Michael Jonathan for sure professionally. I remember when we chatted like deep into season one, when everything was getting off the ground and we were filming and people felt good about how Sweet Tooth looked. And, like all the anxieties started to kind of simmer a bit. And, he copped to me that like I was one of the last people that met on the show, and they were, without kind of the process of costume designing of interviewing is so interesting and such a like not a really trodden path to talk about, I feel like. And it's interesting to delve into because it's a part of the job. And he had talked to me about how they met a lot of people because this was MJ's first show running experience after
Yeah.
being a writer and producer on Cobra Kai. And we just had a connection in the interview. I think we are of similar. We are both, like elder millennials. We're from the Northeast. We just connected. I felt like I knew him in a way that you don't always immediately know your collaborators, and we had a shorthand visually immediately, and then like a mutual respect for each other. I remember he told me he was a big fan of Daredevil, and I, of course, Cobra Kai was a great show, and I just loved his enthusiasm and his ideas. And so, I think that it is a privilege to be able to given the opportunity to work again with collaborators and showrunners and directors, because you do then get to build on that shorthand and have very frank discussions about, okay, what do we want to kind of move away from season two? What do we feel like worked? What can we do? What can we kind of plus? What are we going to change? What are we going to keep? I really think you can kind of see that in the work in season two. And it's interesting. I know you and I, before we started chatting, we were talking about, Oscar season, Emmy season. And one of the through lines of all of the Oscar nominated costume designers from last season is that they had worked with their respective directors
Yeah.
over and over and over for decades.
Hmm.
And that kind of relationship that you then personally you think about and start to build is so precious and so fruitful. So yeah, I think I consider him a friend, but also I am a trusted colleague and really inspired by him.
Yeah, that relationship, I mean, like you've talked about, is really one that's built on trust for all these designers, and similarly for you and the team of Twisted Metal as well. And I assume that trust must have played a big part going into season 2. I know there must have been a conversation like, hey Liz, last season we had Sweet Tooth, that was huge. This season we have like 10, 15 different characters.
Million other people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay, let's get to some of the characters, but we'll start with John and Quiet first. The first season to me felt a little bit more like a road show. These are characters that are kind of brought together. They're on the road. They don't really know who they are. They're running from something or running towards something, and just kind of putting to, of course, we have some great moments like the High C t-shirt, which I still love. But
Yeah.
coming into season 2, John and Quiet, they feel like they have so much more resolve and a better understanding of who they are. And I think that really shows in their costumes. You could feel a subtle upgrade. I mean, John's is a little bit more stronger, but Quiet's is it's subtle, but it's there. It feels upgraded, and you could tell that you all took like a second look at this. Would
Yeah,
you say that's true?
I think that's really astute. And one of the main conversations that we had going into season 2 was about, okay, some time has passed, they've been apart, but they've both grown into themselves in a way. And Quiet, I think that the first major kind of visual signifier of this is that everybody's silhouettes kind of slim down a little
Hmm.
bit. And, we knew that because we're thinking of these as real people in their worlds, but you can't escape the video game character of it all. And
Yeah.
so I think that necessitates uh, a continuity of look. So that's, that kind of motivated John, and also conversations with Anthony where, he 100% was like, yeah, I don't want to feel like John is a clothes horse. I want to feel like he has what he feels best in, and then, moves forward. So he kind of kept his usual t-shirt, vest, cargo pant, Nike look. And for Quiet, we really we reconceived the jacket from her brother, and I mean, frankly, remade it, and all, but with an eye towards Quiet as opposed to an eye towards her brother. And we used the fact that she was living with the dolls, and Dollface was literally sitting at a sewing
Yeah.
machine, to help us think about the ways in which it might have been torn, that she's kind of, she has bullet casings off the front of it, but also her metal shoulder
Well,
piece,
which I love, by the way. I don't know
Oh,
what it is
thank
about a
you.
metal pauldron, but I was like, yes, that
I
it
know.
did everything.
I love that. And, we wanted to, something that Steffi and I had talked about as well, is thinking about Quiet's heritage and that she's Mexican, and, bringing Mexican art historical motifs and this whole lineage in Mexican art of tin art and tin floral motifs, and bringing that surface relief to the shoulder design. And then just this big back piece of embroidery and scrolling and this kind of regal feel to her. And we switched the fabrication. We used a silk velvet as opposed to a poly velvet. I mean, everything was rethought of. And I think it made sense for the character. And also, it was a chance for us to kind of like get into it more from a design perspective. Uh, yeah, I think Quiet, her whole kind of closet, so to speak, throughout the show, I'm really proud of.
Yeah. And to that point then, would you say that the cast of Twisted Metal is quite collaborative when it comes to the costumes?
It's interesting because, one of the things about comedy that I'm sure when you've talked to other and sort of like larger than life characters, is that the costume is only going to work insofar as the characterization is matching it and feels confident in it. So,
Right.
I if I was to put something on Lisa Gilroy as Vermin that she didn't feel like was right, then it's not the right costume, no matter what MJ and I had been like cooking up over the
Yeah.
off season, so to speak. So I I think, especially with John and Quiet, where we knew they would have their kind of main silhouettes, main looks, and not divert so much from that. And we've already spent time with them. I 1000% had a ton of conversations with them.
Hmm.
The funny thing is, in television, you then have like no time for fittings, though. So
Yeah.
it's like it's more trust, and image sharing, and then, and just and a bunch of options, and then, when they come in the week before or whatever it is, in some cases the night before, that's when you're kind of crafting and building and working together for it all. But then on the other hand, you have characters like Vermin, like Raven, in some cases, also Calypso, where they're coming in fresh.
Yeah.
You know, you haven't established, you as the designer are bringing the tone of the show into the fitting room, and then you're kind of asking them and feeling them out for, okay, well, what are your choices going to be, and how can I provide you a costume that works, maybe is funny, or maybe is very serious, but that can kind of augment what you're doing. So yeah, it's different tactics, but it's all I find I mean, like across the board, but I feel especially self-conscious about comedy, you know, to make sure the tone of the look is helping the tone of the performance.
Right. Well, I could confidently say it definitely worked, because there's a scene that I just was so excited for. The moment we've all been waiting for, which is when the tournament finally begins. But not just a tournament, it's when everyone pulls their car into Calypso's garage and you get to see everyone kind of line up like a typical like video game, like pick your character type moment. Take me back to that moment. There must have been a moment where you all just kind of looked around and been like they're all here. This is crazy. It's like an Avengers Assemble moment.
I mean, it was really exciting. The way our stages were set up in Toronto was that there were a huge building of offices where the art department was, and then there were a huge set of sound stages where a lot of the, you know, prop lockups were, and stages, of course. And then there was a building that was on the floor level were the cars and special effects, and then also on the floor was some costume, but then above the cars and special effects was the costume department. Ooh. So we were breathing in the fumes, but we got there, we're like, all right, we're gonna be high the whole time. It's gonna be great for the show. But it actually was it was like the best building. It was like a hive of, you walk in and you literally see what's happening with Axel's rig and with the Beatles, and you see the cars being built and modded, and then you can kind of use that information to go upstairs into the costume department where, you know, we're all cooking our brew. And right across the way from that was that hangar space where all of the, you know, that entry scene.
Yeah.
So I think that feeling was especially triumphant. You know, everybody's dressed, all the cars are done, they're all lined up together, and it just felt like a real moment. And it was great that it was so nearby, because I think a lot of the costume department came in and a lot of the car team came in, and it really felt great. And it felt great that there were no issues. You know,
right. There's a lot of room for error with this type of show.
Ready with a hammer and a drill to, like, you know, get that harness back together. But no, everybody was good.
It's such a, I mean, I literally got like chills when I saw Mr. Grimm pull into this garage. I was like, suddenly I was like 5 years old again. You know, I was like, this is so cool. I love this. Well, let's talk about some of these new characters. We have quite a few of them. I think though the one that I didn't realize I was going to love as much as I did was Dollface, because like you said, I mean, this is a person who's sewing in camp and clearly has a great eye for costume. I mean, this, if you were a character in the show, you would be Dollface, is how I saw it. I'm like, this is such a fun character. So let's start with Dollface. Tell me a little bit about her costume.
Dollface is so interesting because it was a real narrative leap from her origin story in the games. And there have been a few,
right?
But the most immediate, immediately we knew that, unlike in the games, her mask was not going to be welded to her face, and the mask was going to come off, and the masks, they were just part of the armor. And we were so busy with the textiles of the movie that our incredible prop designer Emily Hyde basically took on the Dollface mask and the dolls' masks. I was like, I'll do Sweet Tooth, you do the dolls, you know, that's do the mask, you get the helmet on Grimm, I'll do, you know. So So apart from the masks, I knew that, starting fresh narratively from the games, we still needed kind of a through line of style. I needed kind of something that was motivating Dollface and the dolls stylistically, so it didn't feel like, oh, I'm just making my own clothes and I'm all over the place, and this feels a little crafty. And so obviously, military style, militant gear, army style, let's say, was a huge motivator of this troop of women and one man uh,
Yeah.
who kind of like huddled together in strength. And so I knew that, Dollface to some extent needed to feel general-esque. So, and then beyond that, I came up with this. Kind of mantra for her that she was always repositioning and recontextualizing and constructing menswear into shapes that fit her. So, things that you probably don't even maybe are able to see, but we definitely did, is all the pieces of her cape, of her vest, her trousers are all made from men's costume pattern pieces that are re-put together.
Yeah.
And I think the one kind of moment where maybe it's more apparent is in her fight with Sweet Tooth in Diesel City. She's wearing this kind of navy coat, and you see the innards of a suit. You see like the shoulder pads and the front facings and the lapel, but it's kind of put together in a way. So you see the process in the final product.
Yeah.
And I loved that for her. And also meeting Tiana for the first time was very inspiring. She's really charismatic, of course, and also just like really loves clothes and wears clothes really well. And then that kind of through line carried her through to the tournament look, where we knew she would be on an ATV. And because of, she's very exposed. It's like Grim on the motorcycle.
Yeah.
There's, 4 windows and a
I
wind.
kept thinking about that. I was like, are you sure you want to
Yeah,
leave the car?
I know. And then what happened is the stunt team was like, she has to wear all these pads. Like you're gonna, whatever you do for her, she needs to be padded up. And so I was like, well, why don't we make that the costume? Why wouldn't Dollface have to wear pads too? And so all the padding that, was kind of, what we needed to incorporate was then part of what she was wearing. And I had our incredible crafts team, kind of like cover it with a metal foil and give it a little bit more geometry and dimension, but it's real like ATV padding, moto padding,
Right.
basically, that, we stuck onto her Mugler leggings, and we didn't we went for it. Her knee pads. I mean, we just kind of like as Dollface does, bring the process to the surface, essentially. And that way you're always reminded of her kind of design mind.
Right.
And I was so glad they had a shot of a sewing machine, because I was like, yes, nobody's gonna wonder how it needed to happen.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So that was Dollface.
That's so funny. So that leads me to a question I actually want to ask you. I didn't get to ask you last time around. How did stunts play a role in your process on Twisted Metal? It must have been kind of a sticky situation, I imagine.
Yeah, stunts are real. And also what I learned on this show, driving doubles are real, and they're different. It's a different group.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, because, Anthony's driving double season 1 and season 2 is like NASCAR famous, they really flew in. We had like the best female driver in the lower 48 states come up. Like,
Wow.
they flew people in to drive. And then on top of it, there was often, especially as we got to the tournament, a driving unit and then a main unit, sometimes also, stunt unit. And so the way that affects me is that the multiplicity of costumes that are needed are, I hate to have that inform design decisions, because then we don't have time to do what we really want to do because we have to make so many. But I think honestly, it really it wasn't anything I wasn't used to from my previous work, and I think because of my previous work, I was able to approach it a little bit more prudently sometimes and really understand. There were times where we'd have a stunt double for Sweet Tooth, but I know Joe is doing everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, stunt double, and so you make decisions and choices to kind of just help what you see on screen. And but it was a challenge because every single thing was touched by more than one area of our department. There wasn't a lot that fell out of the stores necessarily. We made a lot of stuff. We augmented a lot of stuff. I think at one point we were employing every tailor in the greater Toronto area. Like literally, like this person's stuff was here, this person's stuff. Our own amazing draper, Angela, was up to her eyeballs. So it was just a lot of coordination, and I credit my incredible assistant costume designers, Christine and Chelsea. And also, I just want to say we had some incredible shoppers and buyers on the show. I'm sure who you've talked to. We had Chris Hargadon,
Oh,
Laura
wow.
Montgomery of What We Do in the Shadows shopping for us.
What,
And
Laura? That's
yes,
crazy.
and I can't even, it was like they were donating their time. I think it was, I don't know. I mean, both of them are just so knowledgeable. And this show is so fun and nuts that, like, sure, I'll come in and
It's a
like,
twisted metal tournament, so
yeah, literally, like, come on, you guys are in Toronto, of course, like, come on down. And I'm grateful for that, like, generosity of spirit between costume designers, and something that, to pay forward. And also, I mean, we were just so fortunate to have so many incredible eyes out in the world for us. So yeah, the team is what made the stunts happen, I guess, is the conclusion.
yeah. No, that's so cool, and I really love this idea of all these costume designers to come together too and help make this
I
huge,
have to
incredible
say,
show come together. That's cool.
yeah, I have to say that I think that is something that Canadian designers have really taught me more than American designers. And there's something to be learned, I think. Not to say that there aren't incredibly generous, like designers in the US that would help you in a heartbeat. But
Yeah.
there's a community in Canada where it's so and then Chris left us, had to leave us, texted me like, oh, I gotta go. And I'm like, go, man. And little did I working on The Last Airbender. You know what I mean? Like, do your thing, Laura, go get that, CDG nom. Like, it was a real takeaway from my second season experience of, like, yeah, hell yeah. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Well, we have a few more characters I want to ask you about, because each of them had their own incredible design through line. So there's so much to talk to you about in this season.
I know.
I was putting all my notes together this morning. I'm like, great, that's so much. Let's start with Raven. I love Raven. Because I consider myself a gothy person myself.
Yeah.
So this one I really was getting like a little bit of the craft in there. I don't know, just so much fun stuff to play with Raven. I imagine this must have been a fun character to kind of dive into the research on.
It really was. And I think as soon as we knew that we weren't going to have Nev, and that the kind of narrative on her character had changed, and that we were able to divert from the kind of, more like Raven light version of season one into something that was really more game focused, more just more layered and nuanced and idiosyncratic. We just kind of went with it. And I think ultimately we landed on a version, like a suited goth version. She's like running the city. She's like, we were Patty, incredible actress.
So funny. Love her to death.
So great. She's great in everything, and another incredible collaborator. we just kind of, she's like business goth sometimes, and get, with her like little Victorian touches, and John Fluvog's shoes are all over the second season. Great Canadian shoe company, also has like a bit of like a Cirque design to everything he does. So really lent itself to the kind of to the ethos of the show. But I loved moving Patty through, the sort of like her business identity. And then when she gets to the tournament, it's more kind of suited. I mean, it's more jumpsuity and like ready to kind of go, but very accessorized, and shows off her figure and her, she knows what she has and she knows how to use it, kind of a thing. And then in the prom episode, her kind of, that's where we really get peak craft, I feel.
Yeah.
for Raven. And yeah, it was great to play in that world, because it's also so rooted in the 90s and in the early 2000s, so plenty of references to draw from.
Yeah, such a fun character. So a character that appears in season 2, I was very excited for, but I had no idea what this was going to look like. I'm of course talking about Axel. This is a character I remember, seeing in a game and not even really understanding what I was looking at. So going into this season, I was a little like, all right, give it your best shot, I guess. And it really comes through. Tell me about Axel's genes. He has a little bit of a gene story going on here.
He really does. And, that character, like the earliest conversations and Zooms I was on, well before we started prep, were about his rig. And it was really just for me to listen, obviously, to listen in and understand what needed to happen for hands and feet. And then also,
you're like, I have questions.
Yeah, I have questions. And that rig was real. It really did what it did. And watching it kind of get craned around was so funny. It was pretty slow in person. Of like 5 feet in real life and nothing.
That's so funny.
But you saw the gears. I felt like I was on the set of Hook or something,
Right.
Willy Wonka, or like some kind of like real 90s where everything's working in front of you, or like, Tim Burton Batman or something.
Yeah.
But the jeans, we tried a lot of jeans. And actually, if you would have asked me prior to working in prep on the show, I'd been like, oh, he's got to be wearing like Lee's or Wrangler or Levi's, or we're going to build them, or maybe it's a Japanese denim. And, like, it just felt very clear to me that the jeans had to be some kind of iconic brand or iconic, lineage. And to be honest, we bought a lot of jeans, a lot of different types. We had multiple fittings where he'd be like, okay, I'm done trying jeans today.
Yeah.
Promise I'll come back, but I need to sit and think about it for a minute. I'm like, cool, yeah, come back. And it's not like we bought more, it was just like, okay, that was 25 pairs of jeans. Let me just go, let me take a break.
He's like, you're done today.
Yeah. I mean, he ended up in like an off Canadian brand of jean. And it was like I hate to say this about any brand, but I mean, it was like nothing anybody has ever heard of. It's nothing where I can be like, well, we put him in the most iconic American denim because everybody wears Levi's for hundreds of years. It's not what happened. And I think it's because it was all about fit and his body. And then, we ended up over dyeing them, processing making sure it was like the right blue and totally distressed and, X, Y, and Z. But it was so about the fit on his muscular body, and the silhouette of him in the rig, and something that you register and then kind of goes away. It was really, that character is so about like waist up, and then when you see him in a wide, it's very rarely like a 3/4 of him. And so you just had to be like, those are the jeans from the video game. I'm good. Keep it moving. Yeah. And like that's what we accomplished. And it was never something that I thought it was going to be. But it just goes to show you, it was a lesson for me. Like, And the project I had previously done was with a project for Amazon called The Bondsman with
Hmm.
Kevin Bacon, and that was like a Jean Palooza too. But that was only Levi's, only Wranglers. We kept a very iconic Americana denim. And so to move off of that into this, like, something you maybe is at Marshalls or something was like heresy, but it worked. And you just have to keep it open and fitting sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, and
And
you're
all the things.
serving the story at the end of the day, and it worked for the
Yeah,
character, and no one thought anything about it. It just worked when you see him on screen for that first time.
exactly. Yeah.
So I was very excited to see Mr. Grimm because he is just
One
such
of
a
my
cool,
favorite.
spooky character. Even aside from the helmet, which you talked about a little bit earlier, just seeing like the detail on his back and whatnot. I mean, this is someone who spends a lot of time in graveyards. I don't know, a little spooky, a little bondagey. There's a
Yeah.
lot going on there, and I love just every time I get to see him, I'm always like trying to peek around on his jacket when he's on the
Yeah.
bike.
Yeah. He looks so good. Yeah, we made him from the ground up. And Jitterbug did Jeff Churchill, Jitterbug did his boots, who also did Sweet Tooth's boots, and he's an icon in the industry, also Canadian. And I mean, he did Jessica Jones boots. I've been working with Jeff for years. So
Yeah.
um he yeah, I mean, we looked at a lot of, knowing that he came from a asylum, and now he's a moto guy, and his father was like an evil Knievel type performance, motorcyclist. There was like a theatricality there and a bondage, sort of pseudo sexual thing there, and a very dark, um, a graveyard robbing thing there. And also his asylum suit. We looked at a lot of um, old vintage, like Houdini type bondage jumpsuits and vintage straight jackets, and kind of melded the whole thing together. And Richard was so great to work with. This is actually my second time working with him. He was so jazzed. He came in for a million fittings and try-ons, and we ended up making choices like cutting up the back of his jacket so when he was on the bike it kind of flared out.
Yeah.
And I loved that character. The design, every part of it, every step of the way, to me felt very kind of like in my pocket and in my wheelhouse. And yeah, one of my favorites for sure.
Yeah, and also it's like such a staple too to that Twisted Metal universe that really just kind
Yeah.
of brought the whole thing into focus to it. Like I said, it like kind of gave you chills when you saw him, and it just felt so. We saw the costume, like, yeah, that's him. That's how I would imagine he looked like.
I love
So
that.
it was a lot of fun. And the final character I want to ask you about is Calypso, who is really the brains behind this entire tournament. I really, while he's kind of a creepy, evil guy, I do love that he loves this black suit with the red tie, though. It's just, I love that he is committed to his bit through and through.
He's committed to his bit. I mean, I like, and this is another challenge of the show is there's a lot of black, like a
Yeah.
lot of characters in black that were all, I mean, by nature of the game, slightly goth leaning in
Yeah.
different
It's
ways.
dark. Yeah.
Dark. It's yeah. And then on top of them, they had to be dirty and worn in, so that darkens it sometimes. Sometimes that helps lighten it, But so first of all, Anthony Kerrigan is like he is so fun, and his performance, I mean, really, again, there's like a theatricality there that felt like, okay, this suit I'm feeling like definitely the slim silhouette from the game. I think one of the lessons that we took from season 1 into season 2 via Sweet Tooth is that it's okay to lean all the way in and then keep it there, and just let the lunacy drive through, not to, pardon the pun, but like so when you have a clown in polka dot red like red polka dot pants. And like, it's so, we can put Calypso in slim black suits with red ties and get the texture in there, get the sheen, get a nice silhouette for him in the performance. In the, final episodes, I took a lot of notes from a more recent collection that Sarah Burton did with Alexander McQueen, where she brought the collar up and frames his face a little bit, and our fabulous cutters and drapers nailed it, and brought a little silver in there, and gave him just a real kind of nice presence without giving him a cape or without giving him a and actually one of my favorite costumes for Calypso is at the tail end. I think it's in the finale, and it's in the flashback scene. Ooh. They flash back to the 90s, like pre apocalypse. You see Calypso in like the working world. I won't say any more for people who haven't watched the finale yet, but his version of what he wore in real life, walking the streets of LA, actually, was so pitch perfect. And he just wears clothes and loves clothes so much. So everybody was just, I think everybody came to the project, like flew in from LA to Toronto, just excited to be in this crazy sandbox. Yeah, give it to me. Like, give me easy choices. Give me the fun, and then like let's dial it back here and blow it up here, and I'm game. And that was really great.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I love the show so much. It's so refreshing to just see like creative people come together and be like, let's just have fun with this, and like people are gonna like it or they won't, but most likely they will. Like it's just good fun. Let's blow some shit up.
Literally, yeah.
Which, speaking of, I wanted to ask you before I let you go, we've kind of talked about this before, but I can't stand an apocalypse show where everyone feels like they're wearing brand new clothes. And with Twisted Metal, you could really tell that just everything's very aged in. Everyone's wearing these pieces through the end of their life. There's also lots of blood and dust and all sorts of things going on. So tell me about the breakdown process on Twisted Metal and how crucial that was to you and your crew.
It was like the most important step. Nothing left the shop without going through the breakdown room, and our lead breakdown artist, Emma Doyle, and then we had tons of folks in with her, and we had incredible textile painters, and again, moving things all over the Greater Toronto area to get it done. And they worked so hard. And I hope, I know, and I also simultaneously hope that they feel the fruits of their labor on screen, because I can't think about that part of the department without thinking about the tremendous amount of work, of handwork, of like real physical labor, coupled with like artistry, and it's, I learned a lot from season 1 about textile choices and, all, things I thought I knew, but then I really knew, to move away as much as possible from synthetic and get more into natural things, and, color tones that would support being able to see dirt and grime and everything. And we also had incredible costume craft maker who helped us tremendously. Milena, she's an icon. I can't believe she agreed to do the show. And the sort of like, the beehive of like the different rooms and everybody just, believing in the work and working so hard. I mean, it was, it was stressful for sure too, just knowing that everything had to pass through that breakdown room. Not one thing didn't. And yeah, just a huge amount of labor, and I'm indebted to them, truly.
Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
everyone on the show absolutely killed it. So, I mean, I wish I
Yes.
could interview every single person on this crew. But that brings us to the end of talking about season 2. So, Liz, I mean, you've now brought 2 seasons of Twisted Metal to life, each packed with a ton of imaginative characters, all with their own personalities and costumes. So, when you look back, what stands out to you about this experience, and just how are you feeling looking back on these 2 seasons of this really incredible and successful show?
I feel very proud of the work, of really kind of everybody in my department going out on a creative limb and all trusting each other to make some kind of out of the box choices, and trusting the showrunners and the actors and the whole group that we were all on the same wavelength. Uh, and I feel very proud that the fan base, that not only like the new fan base, but also the fan base that has been with the game for all these years and been with the series of games for all these years, feel like seen and heard. Because I think you and I have talked about this before. Playing video games can be a very personal experience and very formative in people's childhoods,
Yeah.
very, personal in their adulthoods, of course. It's just kind of it can be a social scene, but it can also be just like a de-stress moment. And you enter into those worlds, yourself by yourself. And so to have someone come along and be like, these characters you know and love, I'm not going to bring them to life. And I hope you dig it. Really, I dig it. I hope you dig it. And it's we can agree, disagree on certain choices, but one thing I can stand 10 toes on is that I know we respected the material, and took it seriously and paid attention to every choice and always hoped to make sure that we were doing the material justice. So even with a clown,
Yeah.
with fighting a guy with an umbilical cord on the side of the road, took that seriously.
Yeah.
So, and that's just something I'm gonna, use and bring to my work going forward. And I love when I see that on screen, from other designers as well. So, yeah, proud of it. Hopeful for another season. And I'm glad, people enjoy watching it.
Yeah. Well, as your friend, I feel just proud of you also and your entire
Oh,
crew. It's really so good. I'm so glad I got to see you. Costume designer Elisabeth Vastola, thank you so much for being here. Please don't let this be another 2 years before I get to talk to you about
I know.
Twisted
I
Metal.
know, the knocked out the door. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here, Liz.
Thanks, Spencer.
The Costume House with Spencer Williams is a production of The Art of Costume. This episode was hosted, produced, and edited by Spencer Williams. To discover more conversations with the designers shaping film, television, and theater, visit theartofcostume.com or follow us on social media at The Art of Costume. And don't forget to connect with me on Instagram at HostSpencer. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts or watch on YouTube. And stay tuned for more episodes celebrating the designers shaping today's most captivating films, television series, and stage plays.